All right, we'll get right to it. You saw the thumbnail. Can Georgia beat Texas? It's a good question. We're going to talk about that. Partly the purpose of this video is to break that game down and find out if Georgia can beat Texas. Quick glance at some of the stats. One thing that stands out is just the overall positioning of Texas in stats. 9th, 16th, 7th. We'll tell you what stats they are in a minute. Like I said, they're going to break it down. You look at the Georgia side, and it's amazing how low Georgia ranks on the same stats. We're going to talk about stat comparison, because how else can you decide if a team can win a game? Before we break it down, I want to go back in time a bit to get the situation in everybody's head of where Georgia's really at right now. I want to evaluate this game and compare Georgia to the team that they always should compare themselves to. And that was the Georgia teams that won back-to-back titles. And they need to remember that it wasn't too long ago that was the team that they were. And it's not the team they are now. Expectations have dropped, which is only natural. But we just can't gloss over how close Georgia was to perfection. That 21-22 team was, in my opinion, the perfect football team. I certainly wouldn't change anything about it. If I was to design my own team, I'd just pick that one. So you want the benefits that team had with different personnel, but you don't want to waver too far from that template. Why should you? It's perfect. I think it stacks up to the Miamis and Notre Dames, any Alabama team I've ever heard of. It stacks up to any team that dominated. Not only does it stack up, it excels. This team was perfect. You could not beat this team. It took everything Alabama has, including all the influence that goes with a game, to beat them every time. It's almost as if you take that away and it's a no-brainer. But that team still was fielded. And the guy that built it is Kirby Smart. I can't sit here and show you these stat comparisons without referencing the fact that this coach would have to be considered the top coach in the country, at the top position in the top program. That, not even 2 years ago, was clearly the dominant team in everyone's minds. There was no question about it. And now, last season and this one together, this Georgia team is not the same team. And we have to talk about that might have to be figured into if you're going to evaluate this game, is that this team still is a lot like that team that was invincible. It's just not quite clicking. We're going to talk about what might be the problem. All that and more in just a moment. Okay, so we talked about Georgia, and let's talk a little bit about Texas. Go back their last 3 years. Well, like last year, they made the playoffs. They beat Alabama in the regular season, made the playoffs, but they didn't win a national title. Stepping stone kind of year. And they had the greatest quarterback probably in the game, and they signed probably the next greatest one waiting in the wings. They got good receivers. And Sarkisian's a great offensive mind. So it's been about that. Sarkisian was another disciple of Nick Saban's and Kirby Smart, and Sarkisian used to coach on the same team. There's that connection. You'd think that's to bring out the best in Kirby Smart and Sark. So Texas comes up, and this year it's the magical season so far. 6-0, top in the country for the most part. But their schedule has been light. Take a look at that schedule. Louisiana Monroe 51-3, Mississippi State 35-13, Oklahoma 34-3. Most recently, they beat Michigan handily, Colorado State, and Texas wherever, UTSA. So they haven't played anybody. Louisiana Monroe, UTSA, Mississippi State, Colorado State. Michigan's the only win they got that's impressive. Oklahoma is not a good football team. 34-3 means that they took care of business and probably kept it vanilla. There's no indication of what they could have done to Oklahoma. But Georgia comes in. Take a look at their schedule. Started off with Clemson, a marquee game. And Georgia basically had off-field issues. They came off a disappointing year last year, didn't make the playoffs. The kind of year that you think would be a year of redemption for Georgia. The kind of year that you would think everybody would be coming in to really make it happen. And if they could win a title, it would still be historic. 3 out of 4 seasons and going undefeated in the season that you didn't win a title. Georgia has everything in front of them to maintain that legacy that the 21-22 teams brought them. But this year they have stumbled and failed to show anything. You can't say with any authority what Georgia might do from one game to the next. They could win easily against Texas, and they could lose badly against them. You just don't know. But the stats are glaring when you really think about it. We're going to talk about the Georgia schedule. And Georgia started off with Clemson, ex-Tennessee Tech or somebody, and had a close game at Kentucky, and lost Alabama, and beat Auburn 31-13, beat Mississippi State 41-31, and that game left everyone with a bad taste. It was a game that felt a lot like a loss. So Georgia has no momentum coming into this game. Sometimes that can help a team, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. But one reason Georgia doesn't have momentum is because they don't actively appreciate momentum even in a football game. They take the first 2 quarters off and sleepwalk. It's hard to get momentum when you're sleepwalking. Georgia has sleepwalked through the entire season. Coaching, defense and offense, intangibles, special teams, then the quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs in the secondary. It's kind of like you got to look at those and see who's got the edge. And in doing that, Texas has the coaching edge, clearly. Sarkisian has a great offensive mind, and offense will probably win this game. The team, this offense that works the best will win. Huh, really? Isn't it always the case? Well, probably. But the reason people are in awe of Texas is their ability to score. They have great numbers when it comes to measuring offense. They're a good offensive team. The defense is we'll have to study that a little bit. Could be some weak links, but we don't know much about looking at numbers yet because Texas, the schedule doesn't give us a lot of information so those number comparisons could be totally counterfeit. The numbers favor Texas dramatically. And I'm going to get to some numbers that really matter in just a minute concerning Georgia. And it's numbers they're going to have to turn around. I don't know how you can turn around season numbers this late in the season. You pretty much may have shown us what you got. But Georgia only has an advantage maybe on defense. It's questionable if that's an advantage, but I say they probably do. And special teams. They don't have an advantage in coaching. Georgia has a bad offensive coordinator and a bad defensive coordinator and a bad offensive line coach. That's 3 bad coaches. They're bad. They're not good coaches. I don't know how Kirby Smart allowed his coaching staff to degrade to that level, but no one could claim that Mike Bobo is a good offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator isn't doing well, but the jury is out on whether it's his fault. There's a lot of things to go into it. One of the things affecting all these teams, affects every team, is the way the game has changed. NIL, transfer portal, you can have a different roster very quickly. And so your teams haven't been given the opportunity to develop character and personality and chemistry. Georgia's going to have to come up with a whole lot of chemistry to be able to beat Texas, but just on paper, I don't see how Texas roster could be that much better than Georgia's. Because Kirby Smart, for the most part, has been able to pick his own players, almost hand-pick, for the last 7 years. If he wants a player, he usually gets him, but if he wants a certain kind of player, he can find it. So when you come up here and say Georgia doesn't have the receivers, well, they recruited them, and they should have them. They haven't displayed the numbers. They haven't displayed the chemistry. The offensive line's not effective. Defensive line's not effective. They don't have a good pass rush. Not good on the edge. And, of course, the secondary has been exposed as potentially ineffective. If you don't get a good pass rush, you can't be the kind of defense this Georgia team has been. So they're going to have to find a way to get pressure, even if it's not going to be the right way to beat Ewers. If Ewers, how do you say his name? If Texas has all day to make the throws, they're going to beat Georgia, or at least it's going to be a needless, pointless shootout. And this game could become a shootout. So can Georgia win a shootout? Kirby Smart has only had 2 shootouts since he came to Georgia. He won them both. Oklahoma and Ohio State, both of them playoff games. So Georgia could certainly win a shootout if that is how the game goes, and it very well could be a shootout. And as I said, the best offense will probably win this game. And it may take a really great offensive day to win this game. Now let's talk just a minute about how this 21 Georgia team, or 22 Georgia team, would have fared against Texas. That's a quick answer. They would have beat them. Most likely something like 50-10, 50-20. That team that won back-to-back titles would have beaten this Texas team, and it would have been about as questionable as one of the Kentucky game when they were undefeated. Yeah, or like the Ole Miss game last year. It would be a game like that. Has Georgia dropped in their recruiting for them to be so much worse than they were then? No. It's all in their coaching, but the coaching is there, and it certainly ain't going anywhere this week. So Texas has the edge in coaching, which gives them the edge in offense, even if they had equal personnel, but with the superior quarterback on the field, and probably the best receivers, the Texas offense has an advantage.